Hello there. If you were to track the history of today's topic, you would find that it spans many years at this point due to how it has lived on and further expanded itself to be a library of monstrous creations at this point. The SCP Foundation is something of intrigue with how it continues to develop and grow its numbers alongside the fandom itself, which feeds into creating a more fleshed out world as everything comes together one way or another. Even I tried coming up with one, but never saw the whole thing through, with the basis of it being a shed that had a random SCP inside if the door opened inwards, but the opposite of an already existing SCP would appear if the door opened outwards. It just goes to show how easy it is to create some of these as long as you have the penmanship to back it up. That being said, for an outsider it may seem daunting to go file by file to look at all the cases presented and pick out a few to read, since they can be dense with information, especially when it comes to the more popular ones like SCP-096 or the Shy Guy. This is where YouTubers have come in to help provide the same level of terror you would have felt when scrolling through these cases by adding illustrations or condensing the entries to be easier to listen to or to highlight the more important aspects. It works as another way of introducing new people without warding them off if they can't deal with so much being pushed in front of them to read. Though this is where we get issues that arrive when things become too simple. Things may be rushed through, details scattered around or completely missed out, or just a complete lack of care for the material to where the other more in tune members feel robbed. Join me as I show you what the issues are surrounding all of this mass-produced and shortened form of content that is doing a disservice to the SCP community as a whole, whether it was by intention or not. Before we begin, I just want to remind you all to subscribe. It's been a while since I've made a commentary video such as this, so I've been slacking with asking for help, but I still think the push for 1,000 subscribers has a chance to happen before the year is up. They may be lowering the requirement for a partnership, but I'm still gunning to get 4 digits sooner rather than later. I still have my plans after all, which will eventually reach the surface and ultimately make for some fun side stuff when the time is correct. I have you all to thank for getting me this far anyhow, if not those speaking to me behind the scenes too. Nonetheless, let's cover the issues which have been silently festering beneath people's noses for quite some time now. To freely jump into breaking down what is what could leave people out of the loop as to what the bare bones of an SCP is, and thus miss the importance as to why this is an issue to begin with. That's why I'll set out a basic structure so you understand the common terminology alongside how certain foundations work as a whole. To begin with, SCP stands for Secure, Contain, Protect, which is the motto for these foundations, as the monsters themselves are not known to the public, with measures being taken to have people forget or be processed if they do get in contact with one. These SCPs are then categorized across 3 main classes, with others being for more rare cases that likely don't apply to the average entry. As such, they go by Safe, Euclid and Keter. Safe classes are what you expect. They don't need much being done in order to keep them contained, and the resources they use up are next to nothing, with some being used by Foundation staff such as SCP-458, which creates pizza to the opener's liking. Euclid classes are most common with SCPs due to applying to most things autonomous, sentient or sapient, as they are unpredictable, meaning that they need more resources being used on them, which could include guarding, stronger containment, etc. Keeping Euclid from breaking out is harder basically. Keter classes typically are the hardest to keep contained or take a hefty amount of work to keep under lock and key, which could come down to them having complex methods of making sure the SCP stays put. Some SCPs can be moved around depending on circumstance or if more is learned about them in the future. It's typically why we have so many in Euclid and Keter, since not much is known about them. They don't necessarily have to be violent to receive Keter classification, it's all depending on containment at the end of the day. The classification system also helps in the way of deciding which SCP goes to which Foundation site, as there are dozens all over the place to accommodate the vast amount of anomalies which are scattered across the world. These sites can vary from structure to purpose to SCP to personnel inside, but this only really depends on the file at hand. Without boring you too much with an abundance of details, there are different personnel to fit different roles, such as guard, scientist or D-class. There isn't much to say about guards in particular, but scientists are usually given a name due to their link back to the research they may do for a file when going through what makes an anomaly tick, even if it results in their death. D-Class are simply lab rats, which are being plucked from prisons after committing horrendous crimes, if not those on death row, and used however the higher personnel see them fit, but they really don't get much leeway otherwise. We have the O5 Council, which are seemingly made up of who knows how many people of who knows what origin at this point, and the many task force units that are equipped to tackle any and all terrains to ensure capture of SCPs. Then again, this can branch out to security, or groups dedicated to removing moles as well from inside the foundations. All of this, without mentioning the many terrorist groups, versus matchups or fan stories, should give you an idea of the information getting played around with here, and why it can be important to get everything in order if they were to condense it down. Failing to add such could leave out key context, or restrict which has been built up already, even if it is just the names of the task force, or the scientists involved with reviewing the anomalies. It also seems kind of disrespectful to the original authors, who poured in a lot of effort just to have their work sampled from whilst the rest is left aside, potentially making the watcher grow disinterested with further pursuing more about the SCP. This is where the team-run channels come in. When it comes down to the channels which more so popped up to benefit from the SCP trend at the time, this would be groups like SCP Explained, which is a shoot-off from the infographic show, or TheRubber, which has its own unique character and voice behind each installment. Off the bat, I draw issue with how each looks, with the former being more of an issue than the latter, as the art style also gets carried over from their main channel as well. This means that, sure, the humans don't look too bad considering what they're made with, but the SCPs just look plastic whenever they appear, since they aren't made with care in mind. As a result, it gives a poor representation of those SCPs and seems to favour going down the route of not caring for accuracy as long as the point is gotten across to the audience. Instead, the issue with TheRubber lies in the fact they pander towards a younger audience with how the art style is presented to the viewer, with simple designs and near to no violence, which even then is censored to quite a margin. Even the animation part of the titles can be a bit dubious in appearance due to how clunky it appears within the videos, to the point of being more so in line with the Storytime animation channel back when they were a craze. At least with the thumbnails, it is giving off a better idea as to what the SCP at hand is like, and the overall design is more detailed to add an easier understanding to the appearance also. Then again, they can also show signs of clickbaiting too, if not being all kinds of weirdness. With TheRubber, we have their video of SCP-6047, Walks Beneath the Roses, which you would think depicts the anomaly as some sort of wild threat that consumes people whole, but what you're seeing is technically SCP-6047-1, which is an additional entity that comes from the former, and it is actually passive unless it is attacked first, with it eventually being free for Foundation staff to be around in the botanical gardens it resides in. Then there's just this from the SCP Explained channel, which is just an unnecessary breakaway from what the anomaly actually is as a whole, and really that's another issue in and of itself. With the SCP Explained channel, they will heavily rely on reusing SCPs in order to gain traction on their videos, with it being seen with SCP-096, the Shy Guy, SCP-682, the Hard to Kill Lizard, and SCP-049, the Plague Doctor. Of course, these are some of the most well-known anomalies from the Foundation files, so it is no reason the channel would repeatedly use them for clickbait time in and time out until they prove redundant or boring. Hell, if you want to take this one step further, then you can basically start to recycle their older videos to make these multi-hour monsters of similar names to act as a filler now that they have started to pull attention away from the channel entirely. I'll explore that more in the next section, but TheRubber mostly follows the same path as the former, just on a lesser scale, since SCP-096 and SCP-173 are the targets this time around. Sure, they go back to post some videos on their other SCPs, but it is a short-lived manner considering how often they reach to use the bailout option to save themselves actually putting in some work. After all this, what do you think the spoken material is like? All organised and gives a proper rundown of things? Gives the necessary details you'd expect to find here? Well, they do a good enough job giving the rundown, but leave bits and pieces out that would otherwise contribute to better showing how the anomaly functions. Such as TheRubber's SCP-999, the Tickle Monster video, which made note of the fact it grants the ability to cure feelings of sadness at a touch, but forgot to include that it will take specific interest in those who are feeling hurt or unhappy and soothe their nerves. Moreover, 999 will put itself in harm's way in order to protect humans whilst being completely vegetarian, since it despises uses harm against animals of any kind, especially humans. It may not seem like much on the surface, but it further promotes the idea that this is a force for peace despite being offspring from the Scarlet King. Whereas with SCP Explained, SCP-5967, the eyeball licker, they don't properly quote what happens during the interview between a command leader and a researcher, as the infected starts hearing things, coughing profusely, then vomits the eyeball out instead of it sitting in their mouth. Not only that, but they don't mention much of the interview with Salem Steros, which could have been cool to have since it provides a new outlook on the anomaly at hand, especially with the MRI results showing eyeballs forming within his brain. They tend to just get things wrong in general, like, again, where the corpses don't turn into pillars but fleshy orbs of eyes and muscles before charging at them. If anything, they also make stuff up regarding what happens to Gamma post-mission, since the logs never demonstrate suffering on her end, and we don't know if being licked in the eye would be enough to infect her. As a result, it goes to show that they aren't giving us a full gaze at the hand being dealt, and instead simply taking bits here or there that they think will make for a good video, whilst dropping other crucial bits to save time during production. The worst thing though? They basically fucked over a bunch of other SCP creators. Back when I viewed content surrounding the SCP Foundation more frequently, there was always a back and forth between the bigger channels that were clearly run by a larger team than the smaller creators that had popularized it to begin with. Some being SCP Illustrated, who goes by Mr. Illustrated now, Dr. Cremarian, and the Volgun, who often worked together on scripting or just lending a hand with one another. The cracks began to show when in a now deleted video, Mr. Illustrated ranted about the issues with TheRubber and SCP Explained when they began to muscle into their territory with drop-offs in subscribers, views and engagement as a whole. This would later be backed up by Dr. Cremarian when they showed further proof of their own plummeting subscriber growth from when the channel started operations in September 2020 and onwards. With Dr. Cremarian posting only 2 days a week and Mr. Illustrated maybe posting once a week due to the effort necessary, there was no way to keep up with the other channels, and as such they suffered because of it greatly. Where the big channels sat at around 2 million subscribers, these other creators ended up with 800k or 75k despite them putting in so much more effort, but that's just the way in which the internet works, unfortunately. Due to not being able to keep up, they were second rate and likely lost a majority of their success, with it being hard to salvage nowadays. On a regular video, Mr. Illustrated will barely pass 70k per video, and nowadays decide to move away from SCP stuff besides that which is already set out and needs completing. No doubt the stagnation was raised in part thanks to the bigger channels that have been looming overhead, but I also expect this to be natural progression, which was forced on anyways. It gets worse though, as when looking between SCP Explained and Mr. Illustrated, I noticed a recurring video idea that seemed to infest itself, and is shocking they would do it so bluntly. That being the When Day Break series, where for Mr. Illustrated it was a series following a protagonist through an SCP-001 scenario until they come across another SCP to interact with, which might have been caught out in the sun. The SCP Explained channel has taken such a concept and turned it into their own series to benefit from, say throw in the better known SCPs again to suffer under the misery of what the events bring forth. Now, it wasn't like Mr. Illustrated created the anomaly, nor copyrighted his tale, but at the least when he made it there was a firm structure to how everything unfolded, and the longer storylines felt like they had purpose to be a meaningful story. Even the one-offs were able to tell a compelling story of loss and defeat, if not found salvation or camaraderie. But these created by the SCP Explained channel just feel hollow and like another mass-produced entity that has no heart to it. It sucks because you can already tell which usually outclass the other, with Mr. Illustrated's playlist slowly tapering out in views to what we have now. With the current standing, it is proving to be quite the downward spiral for the SCP Explained channel, as it has fallen from grace and seemingly having resources removed due to how many of the videos are that of compilations nowadays. TheRubber seems to be following the same sad state of affairs as well now, since their view counts are dropping rather quickly and there isn't much bringing in the numbers unless they rely on using popular SCPs to do the job for them. Mr. Illustrated and Dr. Cremarian have also seen a major loss in views, whether by the decay set on by it not adapting sooner, or if many people simply upped and left when they saw a better option not far from the door, leaving them with what they have today, unless pulling something out of the bag. It isn't likely any channel will see new growth besides Mr. Illustrated as he switches genres, but that's just how things are now, even after the bigger 2 tried bringing in the backrooms or other trends to match with SCPs in order to get a better result. This video may not be as long as my usual ones from way back when, or may be lacking in some departments, but this is more so a tester, you could say, before I hop back into the saddle entirely. Seeing the controversy that is on the rise, I want to be able to take a step back and probably grasp everything before releasing a response, so that nothing is missed when things potentially simmer out. Keep your eyes peeled for more commentary coming soon, as I'll try filling the gap that has been left open for so long, with trial and error of course. In any case, I've been VincentSkullMan, and I'll see you next time. Hopefully.